Welcome back, Spiritual Judo for a Sustainable Jesus. With me, your host, Mark Hollenberg, Rego-Monteiro. Let's go. All right, so now I've got the file showing all the images that, a fuller range of the images, let's say. Where is the lady researcher? Okay, need to go down here a little further. There she is, Pearl Kendrick. Bringing her up. There she is. Doing the graphic. And let's get the document. Okay, so there's Pearl Kendrick. Now, so this is Grace Elderling at the moment. She was hired to do the research. She led cough plate diagnostics and quarantine of patients for 35 days. So many of us are getting exposed to that concept of quarantine these days of coronavirus, COVID-19. During the Depression, so her research in Michigan then on pertussis during the Depression meant that funding was scarce. The stock market crash because of manipulation by the likes of J.P. Morgan, right? That was investigated by a commission. What was the name of that commission? I'll have to look that up again. But that was then supported by FDR. Whole interesting story there. Quite miraculous, in fact. And what more? Let's see. So then, just as general notes get a perspective, more of a perspective of her life, Grace Eldering, she volunteered with the blind and physically handicapped. Now, Lonnie Gordon, the African American, was born in Arkansas, moved to Michigan as a child with her family, got a degree in home economics and chemistry. She moved to Virginia to work as a dietitian at an institute for the mentally ill, but was not treated well in Virginia and given unsatisfactory living quarters, and so she returned to Michigan, right? With destiny playing its mighty song. She tried to find work as a dietitian, but was told white male chefs wouldn't take instructions from a female black dietitian. Oh, love to hear that. Tolerance, racial blindness. No. So there was racism. She recognized that. So now in her work, when she got hired by, I think it was Miss Kendrick, Dr. Kendrick or whatever, she recognized that sheep's blood, Lonnie Gordon, the African American who had the rough time, she recognized that sheep's blood was conducive to incubating the organism. And we are talking about pertussis, whooping cough. So sheep's blood, she recognized that, and led to the identification of a powerful strain of P, of pertussis, an important strain that they needed to respond to. So the Michigan, with their work, the Michigan Department of Public Health began producing vaccine in 1938, right? A separate strand, a separate line of development. Then, who was the other one? Lila Denmark, MD, in Atlanta, Georgia, with Eli Lilly and Company. So now the Michigan Women's Hall of Fame has honored Lonnie Gordon in 2000, which incidentally was 17 years after the other two were honored. So just to shine a little light even on that kind of a little bit of injustice there. Now Pearl Kendrick was invited to Great Britain where vaccine production was unsuccessful. 1935, Grace Eldering and Pearl Kendrick presented the vaccine at the American Public Health Association meeting. Lonnie Gordon, what? Was she in the audience? 1935, probably, maybe not. Have you seen the movie Something the Lord Made about the surgeon, the major surgeon and his African-American assistant, who became, with time, quite a respected figure without having gone to any formal educational institution? So he was at one instant, he's there observing from behind a plant or something at some meeting. So reluctance until tested more. Okay, so at that meeting, the establishment, the medical establishment, was reluctant to produce the vaccine until it was tested more adequately. So Wade, the team in Michigan, the women's team, the team of women, called in Wade Hampton Frost of Johns Hopkins to consult. They developed their vaccine by reducing the quantity of inactive bacteria that apparently helped it. And then they combined it with multiple vaccinations so that was whooping cough with diphtheria with tetanus, right? Diphtheria and tetanus there. What was diphtheria? Diphtheria in the 1920s, 100,000 to 200,000 cases, 13,000 to 15,000 deaths per year. Nome, Alaska, 1925 had an epidemic. So there was when the vaccine was developed, there was a great race of the epidemic. I guess it's kind of a historical nickname now, commemorated now by the Iditarod, a trail sled dog race. 1600s, diphtheria in Spain, there was one recorded attack. 1700s in New England, another recorded attack. What about tetanus now? Tetanus is caused by a common soil bacterium, noted by Hippocrates in the 4th century BCE. 1897, Edmond Nocard, the ex-Pasteur guy, showed that antitoxin helped in treatment. So now we get to Kitasato Shibasaburo in Berlin and Emil von Behring at Robert Koch's Institute. Let me just check the time here. Okay, still got a little time. So what do we have here now? Looking a little bit about the history. Behring's lab was in the same building as Hans Horst Meyer, who discovered key factors about tetanus toxins. So now Behring he discovered a key substance against bovine tuberculosis in 1905, but was unable to make progress against human TB. Additional notes. Robert Koch, for his part, was involved with studies of tuberculosis, cholera, and anthrax, which we mentioned previously because of his relationship with Pasteur, their rivalry. Robert Koch got the 1905 Nobel in medicine or physiology for one thing or the other, probably, or many. Researchers so now, the bubonic plague, and this has to do then with Shibasaburo. Researchers went to Hong Kong in 1894 for the third pandemic, now historically. Shibasaburo discovered the bubonic plague organism, but a Swiss-French guy who had gone to Hong Kong, A. Yersin, based at the Pasteur Institute, was given the credit for discovering it in full, and determined that the organism was the cause of the plague. In 1898, Paul-Louis Simond, apparently French, also in Hong Kong, performed the classic rat-flea vector experiment. Very important, right? That may be fairly common knowledge now about the bubonic plague. So additional information about the San Francisco area plague, 1900, authorities somebody hid the dead and hid the information to protect commerce, as I recall, was the point, which allowed the disease to then spread to wild rodents in the U.S. West. All this is part of a scheme that involved the 1880s Chinese Exclusion Act, bans against Chinese immigration. And then this wild rodent thing apparently is what is linked to the 1924 Los Angeles bubonic outbreak, although that would need to be examined because there is a Chinatown, I believe. 2015, in the U.S., 16 people in the West, 2 in Yellowstone, came down with bubonic plague. Right, so now there's a little bit of history here. Let me just do a time check. Okay, going to stop it right here for a moment. Cheers, see you in a moment.